Welcome back. You're listening to Massholes in the Morning on 98.5 with your host, PJ McGinnis, yours truly, and my partner in crime, Alex Everett.
Today we've got a great show. We'll take a break from our local sports and talk about the dawn and advancement of sports in a media sense. From the first ever televised sporting events to where we think televised sporting events will be going in the near future.
You know, this is one of the more interesting topics that we'll be discussing on this show, seeing as how this directly affects our jobs. With the advancement in technology, we could be out of the job within the next couple of years.
Let's not think about that and just get this possibly job-ending discussion over with.
Alright, man, sounds good. But where should we start?
How about with the first sporting event ever televised?
Alright, sounds good. I believe it was the year 1939, May 17th. The first United States sporting event to be televised was a college basketball game between Columbia Lions and Princeton Tigers. It was broadcasted by NBC out of Columbia's Baker Field.
While this may have been the first American televised sporting event, the listeners should know that the first world televised sporting event were the 1936 Olympics in Berlin under the rule of Adolf Hitler.
Huh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. But back to the televising of sports in America. NBC was the first network to show American sports and also to show multiple games.
This is true. NBC showed the first college football game between Fordham and Waynesburg College. Since that point, college football has been one of the most widely broadcasted sports on television networks today. Along with that, NBC showed the first NFL game on October 22nd, 1939, between the Philadelphia Eagles and Brooklyn Dodgers.
Wow, Brooklyn Dodgers. Hard to believe that was a football team. That's a name that I haven't heard in a long time. And on top of that, NBC also showed the first NHL game in 1940.
From the looks of it, NBC really led the charge on televising sports.
Right you are. And since that point, the number of sports networks has skyrocketed with ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, ABC, Fox, NBC, NESN, MSG, Versus, TNT, TBS, NFL Network, and ESPN Deportes.
Wow, with all these networks battling over showing the sporting events, there must be a good reason. Maybe revenue? Commercials during big sporting events are a huge source of revenue. A 30-second time slot in last year's Super Bowl cost between $2.5 and $2.8 million.
Wow.
Along with that, iconic sports figures are being used more and more in commercials to help sell products. For example, Aaron Rodgers being used to sell insurance, or Tom Brady wearing man Uggs.
You know what, Alex? I'm glad you brought that up, and the topic of commercials in sports, because that's become one of the biggest aspects of sports television. Maybe people watch games such as the Super Bowl for the always funny commercials. Networks are also making commercials based on upcoming sporting events, also known as promo ads, which makes to help boost interest in the upcoming events.
Another way that the sports and media relationship has changed is the way that TV shows are being made to bring the viewer into the behind-the-scenes action of a certain sports team, such as Hard Knocks and 24/7.
Yeah, I've actually watched these shows, and it gives the viewer a more personal connection with these professional athletes. They're no longer on the pedestal that they always seem to be on during the game or in a post-game interview. The viewer gets to see the pains, aches, and difficulties that the player goes through in the pursuit of a championship season. They just seem like average, everyday, hardworking guys like you and I, but with the muscles and just more pure athleticism. On top of all that, it's another source of revenue for the teams and their organizations and also the networks that broadcast them.
All good points, but I want to touch on one specific thing that you mentioned, and that's the post-game interviews. The creation of the post-game interview is much like those shows that you mentioned. They allow for the viewer to relate to the athletes on a more personal level. We get to see the emotion after a big win or big loss, and again remember that these athletes are human. An example being Kevin Garnett after the Celtics game where he won the NBA championship and his reaction.
Yeah, I remember that. He was criticized for the way he handled the interview. We as viewers were given a glance into the emotion and heart that these players put into every single game. I may be biased, but that was one of the most heartfelt interviews I've ever seen. But that's our point, because most people were sitting watching the game at home in their family rooms, which gives the viewer a more personal feel to my boy, KG, Kevin Garnett.
Before we get to commercial, I just want to touch on one of the more physical aspects of sports viewing. I just got TiVo, and it makes watching the game so much more fun. I can rewind and rewatch an amazing play, or rewind the game if I'm up getting food and miss something.
Or my girlfriend who wants to watch the game a day later when she already knows the score of the game because she can't deal with the anxiety.
Using technology, such as DVR and TiVo, gives the viewer more agency and a more personal experience when watching a game. On another note, let's talk about TVs, because I just got a brand new one. Every time I watch a football game, I feel like I'm on the field when they change the camera view, so it seems like I'm standing right behind Tom Brady.
You know what, Alex? You raise a good point. The way we view sports is changing rapidly. From the black and white, to the color, to the high definition, viewing has changed rapidly over the last couple of decades. When HD first came out, I thought that was going to be the final frontier of sports watching. I could see individual blades of grass on the field and the beads of sweat dripping off the players' faces. When I thought no more could be done, bam, 3D television came out, and my mind was blown.
It is truly amazing. I was over at my buddy's house the other day watching the game, and I couldn't believe how clear the picture was with the 3D. I honestly thought I was at the game, and I was left with the thought, what is next in the viewing of sports?
You know what, Alex? I think next is 3D sound. We have 3D TV, and now I think it needs to be, the sound quality needs to pick up. So that's my bet.
PJ, I agree with you completely. I mean, if we can get the sound up, that'd be great. We're going to leave you, our listeners, with this question. Think about it, call in, give us an answer, and we'll get back to you after this quick commercial break. Don't leave. You're listening to Mass Holes in the Morning on 98.5.